Hi, welcome to another edition of Hashtag Finance. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and today I'm here with Peter Miller from SLANG Worldwide. Peter, you have a great last name. I love it.
Some of the greats.
Tell us a little bit about SLANG Worldwide and what it is you guys do.
Yeah, SLANG Worldwide is a cannabis CPG company. Our whole thesis is that this product, cannabis as an industry, becomes another consumer packaged good category, and that how you organize yourself now will largely determine your success when that happens. So we organize a supply chain that helps get our products to market under our brands very broadly. We're in over 3,000 stores, and we don't retail ourselves to avoid any channel conflict and make sure that we're good partners to all of our retailers and we're not competing with them.
I had the pleasure of interviewing your partner, Billy, a few months ago. How did you guys meet? How did you seem?
Yeah, we've known each other over 10 years now. He had a startup financed in 2006 or 7. And his investors were in Toronto, and they had, I think, more confidence in a couple of young guys at a college in Toronto working on their project in South Beach. So they brought him up here, and I met him pretty soon after he arrived. I was doing media work, producing content, and we developed a working relationship as I produced content for his startup, and a friendship, which over the following 10 years evolved into a handful of business relationships, and we co-founded a Canadian licensed producer together and had a great run. And that was kind of our boot camp and informed our view on the cannabis industry. So almost 3 years ago when we started SLANG, we took everything that we kind of had learned from our previous technology and media sort of careers. He had a great exit to private equity, and we focused on cannabis as a consumer packaged good in a very dynamic startup environment.
Now, the CPG industry. When I spoke to Billy as well, it seemed like you determined that really, really early on. Like you saw, I don't know if you used the crystal ball or what, however it is you did, but you saw that this is definitively where it's going, and this will separate you from others. There are a lot of others now out there. The term house of brands is being used at will. What is the differentiator between SLANG Worldwide and the others?
Yeah, so I think our crystal ball was the first legal states. So we, being in Canada, could be kind of isolated and siloed and think that what's happening here is what is happening elsewhere. But realistically, years before Canada started evolving into this rec CPG model, which is just starting to do, Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon were evolving very quickly. And so traveling to those places to educate ourselves on the legal industry years ago helped us basically form the view of watching product go from generic cannabis in a jar to more sophisticated packaging, form factors, everything. And so I think one of the big differentiators and what allows us to say we are a house of brands are a few things. One is our brands are performing in the market broadly. So it's not just a logo and a slideshow. These products are being consumed by the tens of millions of servings per quarter across multiple geographies. And like I said, we're not retailing. We're just focused on branded product and getting them to market through other retailers. So there's a lot of folks saying a lot of things because every maybe quarter that I've been in this, going back almost 7 years, there's been a different kind of theme. And the themes initially were do you have a license? Great, that gets you financed. How much capacity do you have? How many patients do you have? When it was pure medical, then it became more about funded capacity. What could you do with this money and what would that make you worth? Then it became more and more about performance of your brands and ultimately the performance of your fundamentals as a business, which I welcome, and I think we're going to do really well in that environment. So there's a lot of folks trying to figure this out, and it's not because they're being disingenuous or because they, it's just a very dynamic space. So we're incredibly excited that even with all of the the choppy waves and everything else, we're selling more product now than we did last month, than we did the month before that, and there's been really steady growth, even though the market perception, the market performance of all the names has been very volatile. I almost see that as kind of weather, and climate is just growth of the industry over time.
No, I totally agree, and I think that as a sector and as a group, you're going to have some periods of accelerated growth, and you're going to have some declines as well. What brings you now to the 72nd floor of First Canadian Place in Toronto? Why are you here today?
Well, you have the best view in the city, and so I can see directly to the Rochester Kodak Industrial Park. So other than that, we rang the bell today, which was an honor. So we had some of our team here. We opened the market, which was really exciting and kind of represented a lot of things that culminated in that moment.
Now, this isn't just a ring the bell sort of moment. Today is, or this period of time is actually a special moment for SLANG. Can you talk a little bit about the harvest that's going on?
Yeah,
and what it is?
We've had a series of firsts around our supply chain. So today in Canada, our Canadian operation, they just started the first outdoor harvest of cannabis, one of the first in Canadian history, legal cannabis Canadian history, and it's super exciting. So there's an army of folks out there harvesting some really nice product, which will go into a variety of finished goods, and we've had a handful of these firsts. In Denver, our facility that produces some of our brands was the first licensed extraction facility in the U.S. market, legal U.S. market. In Canada, the facility that produces our products was the first ground-up construction facility back in 2013. It was the first license to do supercritical CO2 extraction. It's one of the first to do an outdoor harvest. So we're excited. We've kind of been on the front lines of this thing for a long time, which is a scary but really exciting place to be.
We met some of your teammates, and we were just commenting sort of behind the camera that everybody seems really, really happy, and it's just a good group and a good energy and a good vibe. And I would imagine that that's sort of how you pick your partners, or the people that you choose to work with. Is there anything else that is a key ingredient in the selection of people, groups, places that you choose to associate with?
Yeah, so much of business is people and the human element.
Yeah.
So the team you met out there are, CPAs and MBAs and Ivy Leaguers and whatnot. But there's a lot of those, out in the world.
Right.
Maybe not as a percent, but in absolute terms. And ultimately, if you're going to be working 40 hours a week for a normal person, but probably at least 1.5, 2x that in a startup.
Right.
If you're not working with people you like, then the vast majority of your waking life is going to be miserable. So we have a great team that are highly qualified, but we're also in this together and have chosen to be in this together. And it hasn't been sort of a combination of begrudging folks. We have a truly awesome team, and I wake up every day really excited to work with them.
Well, that's a big shout out to your team and the SLANG family. Speaking of really cool, different, unique, special individuals, there was somebody that chose to associate with SLANG quite recently by the name of Bruce. Can you speak a little bit on how that came to be and what it means for SLANG?
Yeah, well, obviously Bruce's bio speaks for itself.
Sorry, it's Bruce Linton.
Bruce Linton,
in case anybody's listening and didn't quite know.
So we first became aware of Bruce Linton as competitors when we were with Metrum Health Corp, and he was starting up Tweed. And over the next few years as competitors, I think there was a healthy respect, and ultimately Canopy Growth acquired Metrum Health. Right around that same period of time, Billy and I started SLANG and started assembling brand rights both internationally and U.S. and Canada. And Bruce reached out and said, I'd love to have the opportunity to distribute some of those brands in Canada. I'd like to form, a closer relationship with your business. And so ultimately that's where it started. And that's where we started working together in Canada. And ultimately, Canopy Growth became aligned and positioned in SLANG through exchangeable warrants. that they can exercise upon federal legalization. So there's always a friendly relationship with both Canopy, with Bruce, and then when Bruce left Canopy, I called him probably a week afterward to let the dust settle, and he'd been approached by hundreds of people that wanted him to lend his expertise, name, what have you, to their project. And I just chatted with him, hey, what's up? And I think it was 9 a.m, and he'd already been up for a couple hours doing chores and this and that, and he was fielding opportunities, and I was about to go on vacation, and we got back in touch after that. And in August, September, we just talked about the vision for SLANG and his vision for the industry and different things that he was interested in doing. And ultimately, we were honored by an investment in SLANG by him. And we have a little Canadian exposure, which I think prevented him from taking the title. But as an investor, we're really well aligned. His ideas are really on the cutting edge of the industry. He has relationships with anyone that's ever written a sizable check for the space. He's made a lot of people a lot of money, but he's also just a great guy generally to bounce ideas off of.
Really, really good ambassador for the sector. And on that note, we'll take a quick break. This break is sponsored by the Canadian Securities Exchange.
Broadcasting from the heart of Toronto's financial district at the top of First Canadian Place, CSE TV is your trusted source for what's happening in capital markets. Our #Finance podcast series gets you exclusive long-form interview content with visionary entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies in the news. The CSE's On the Street segments get you up close and personal with many of our listed companies. And don't forget that you can find the video version of this and all our media on our CSE TV channel on YouTube. For instant notifications, subscribe to CSE TV now.
And we're back. We left off speaking about the well-respected Bruce Linton, and we're going to shift gears a little bit, and let's discuss the vaporizer topic. It's made headlines recently. Unfortunately, there's been deaths associated with it. I believe all of them have been purchased or gained from the black market, none from licensed dispensaries and lit market products. Could you speak a little bit about the association you have with vaporizers? And I know you've spoken publicly about it as well. So.
Yeah, no, it's a tragedy, and obviously, anytime people are getting sick and dying, in some cases, it's scary and obviously a tragedy for those involved. And ultimately, as you pointed out, everything we can really see in terms of data is pointing to what they're calling informal sources, black market. And so in the absence of really good information, it's understandable that people are concerned. But ultimately, the solution to a black market problem is ultimately regulation and pushing people toward the legal market. There have been articles arguing for that. It's not that different than alcohol prohibition, when people were getting sick and dying from black market alcohol. So nothing in the regulated supply chain has been pointed to as a culprit, and ultimately I think there is and will be a greater consensus that regulation and legalization is the answer. And there was an article in Forbes today that made that argument, I think, very well. In terms of our association with cannabis vaporizers, we are among the biggest in the world in terms of selling branded cannabis vaporizer cartridges, hardware, dry flower vaporizers, and there's really a lot of different products that just fall under vaping.
Yes.
So it's also challenging from a communication standpoint for people to understand what vaping is, because we know there's lots of different kinds of eating and lots of different kinds of smoking, and
Right.
If this food's making you sick, it doesn't mean we should. In any case, we're hopeful that greater regulation moves people towards the legal market. Now, in terms of performance and how exposed we are in our portfolio, we are fortunate to be most prominent in established markets.
Okay.
And I think in the most established markets, there's a few things going on. You have the most history and data points, and in the multi-year history of vaporizers, not just our products, but just generally in the Colorado market, for example, there's been an absence of this type of situation, no product liability. So I think that is both comforting to the consumers in that market, But also, if you're a regulator or a politician in an established market, it's a much different decision in terms of making bans temporary or permanent. Because in a new market, Massachusetts, that's still relatively young and fledgling, a ban is more of an opportunity cost. Whereas, in Colorado, it would be over $500 million in direct sales that would go in a ban situation. I can't predict what's going to happen, but the bans we've seen so far on the West Coast have been around flavored products, which represent a minority of our overall portfolio. We're more than just a vaporizer company. We have edibles, we have beverages. We're moving into flower in a significant way. We have a portfolio of branded products, and ultimately the data leads us to which segments of the market we focus on. So we're seeing still net growth, even amidst this moment in time. And I think I share everybody's view that this is a really serious situation, and we need to get to the bottom of it and gather as much data as we can, and then act in a data-oriented way.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And in keeping with that theme of being socially aware, I know that SLANG Worldwide also has a special program that you do. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that one of the things that I benefited from in terms of being able to succeed in the cannabis industry was a total lack of cannabis industry experience, knowledge, relationships, etc. Right. That helped me get a license. As a clean-cut guy from tech who was able to raise some money. Right. And the folks that had been on the front lines of cannabis advocacy, perhaps who had gotten into legal trouble through that process, were largely kept out of the industry in most of the markets. And we recognize that, and I think a lot of companies in the space, not just us, are trying to do things that are socially responsible and that try to account for that. So we support a group called Freedom Grow. It was established by two women in California, one of whom had a nonviolent cannabis conviction. And ultimately, it's a program whereby our staff develop sort of pen pal relationships, but more tangibly with nonviolent cannabis offenders who are in prison. But more importantly, top up their commissary, help them with the basic stuff. Because when you're in prison and you're trying to write, clemency appeals and you're trying to prepare legal documents, you have to buy those typewriter spools from the commissary, and they're going to cost, $5-10+ a pop, and you're going to need many of those just to have a chance to defend yourself properly, and that stuff costs money. And so in the absence of third-party help, you could very easily get stuck in a system that isn't really designed to help you leave it.
See, this is the type of stuff that our audience needs to know. Like, besides just being a really, really good company, there's good people behind it, and that's why I wanted to bring it up and make sure that our audience, our listeners, and viewers know exactly what SLANG is about. Not just the brands and the stuff on the headlines, but sort of. You know your roots, and the people that have helped get you or get this industry to where it is, and leaving no one behind. Let's shift now to, let's get that crystal ball back out.
Okay.
And let's talk. Yeah, it's right here. Can we put that in somehow? 2020, 2021. When people were asking about 2019, they said it's the year of the land grab, the year of mergers and acquisitions, and the year of the brand and branding. And of course, we've seen all of that. 2020, people have said distribution channels a little bit, but what does SLANG see?
Well, I think all of those things will continue. I think there'll be more consolidation even than last year. For reasons of necessity and opportunity, or in some cases both. And you're going to see, I think, more and more of a show me phase from companies that sort of had a vision, and now they've been executing on it for a little while, and we're going to start to see the fruits of that labor, right. Or not. And so True. I think it's going to be... I mentioned outside, we're ultimately in a really promising industry. Yes. We sell a product with perfect product market fit. there's an established consumer base all around the world that has been there for thousands of years. So regulation has created this commercial opportunity, this legal commercial opportunity. And that doesn't mean that it's easy or that it's going to be a layup. I think if you just said to somebody, I'm going to start a cannabis business, I'm gonna produce cannabis products and sell them, they're gonna say, oh, that sounds super straight ahead. And super big picture, the concept is, but there's so many nuances. And in the US, with each state having to have its own supply chain and the regulations being slightly different, even the basic stuff like centralized packaging can be challenging. So I think we're going to see a continued separation in terms of quality. I think that it won't be so much of a land grab as it is just, chew and kind of digest what you bit off in 2019. And I think there's going to be some great companies that do incredibly well. And we are partnership oriented. So It really helps us if lots of companies do well. We're not trying to do it all ourselves. We're not vertically integrated. Our business doesn't work without very successful and great retailers. And a company like TruLeaf, for example, in Florida, who we have a great partnership with, I think will be chief among the more successful groups just by execution and operational excellence.
Shout out to Kim Rivers.
Yeah, absolutely, the whole team.
SLANG Worldwide. Let's talk about the world part. Mm-hmm. What's going on?
We want to be everywhere that cannabis is legal and readily accessible, medical and recreational, and typically those are more established and developed markets. But it doesn't mean we don't want to plant a flag places early, but through partnership. So I mentioned TruLeaf because that's a really important market, Florida, but it's vertically integrated, limited license, and to do it yourself requires a very different skill set, amount of capital, and timeline than partnering. And you can probably multiply the complexity to do that internationally.
Right.
So we have two opportunities that are active right now. One is with a group in Greece and one is with a group in Colombia. Both opportunities have the potential to offer low-cost biomass to their general regions of the world, or at least low-cost biomass as an ingredient in the finished goods that we can hopefully sell in those areas. But ultimately, we are rooting for our partners, and we're not as exposed financially ourselves, but we're going to do everything we can with our know-how to support their success.
And on that note, we will exit this interview. This has been another episode of #Finance. I'm Barrington Miller. This is Peter Miller. We're not related. Although, hey, if you want to adopt, feel
exactly.
free.
Absolutely.
One less name change. Take care, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Hi, it's Grace from the CSC reminding you to make sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates on our listed companies as well as new listing alerts. For more in-depth content, be sure to pick up our free quarterly magazine, Public Entrepreneur, available online at thecsc.com.